Republicans unveiling their tax plan, which aims to lower the corporate rate from 35% down to 20% in order to make the U.S. more competitive around the globe. Now, as promised, small business owners, they're going to get a big tax break, a big one, bringing their top rate down to 25%. And while that sounds really, really, really good for small businesses, I have a question for you. Is this going to end up penalizing the rest of us that work for businesses? In other words, if you're an income earner, you might have a much bigger tax bill than if you're the boss. Here to explain, Janney Montgomery Scott, Chief Investment Strategist, Mark Luschini, along with Manhattan Institute Senior Fellow, Brian Riedl. Good to see you both. Mark, I'll start with you. Explain this to me because, you know, I think it'll be wonderful in terms of it will encourage more people to start their own business. But is it unfairly penalizing wage earners?
I don't think so necessarily, Trish. I mean, granted, the top tax rate for an individual under the current plan is 35%, as opposed to 25 or 20. But the fact of the matter is, at least directionally, it's moving in the right way. And at the end of the day,
you can pick up 10 points if you go start your own firm there.
Well,
you can have Mark Luschini Inc., and you could give all the investment advice, and then you pick up 10 points on your taxes if it's yours, as opposed to working for someone else.
Well, at the same time, though, look, both large and small businesses alike would generally see their margins expand and profitability increase, and that should allow for more hiring and more wage increases. So perhaps some of that offset comes in the way of wage gains as opposed to that which you might give up through the tax code.
I'd like to believe so. I mean, that's the thinking here, right, Brian? That, you know, if you stimulate the economy, you create demand for workers, and that in turn results in higher wages, because Americans haven't gotten a wage increase in about 30 years.
Well, you're exactly right. Wages have pretty much not moved at least since 2007, and so the idea is to help that. You know, there was a study that came out recently by Kevin Hassett that said that internationally, every time the corporate tax rate goes up 1 point, wages drop half a point. So we can't compete internationally with the highest corporate tax. We need lower taxes for businesses to compete. We need lower taxes for small businesses to compete, so that we're not competing with one hand tied behind our back.
I want to jump in and just bring up an issue here. You know, it's easier for politicians to say we're cutting taxes for small business owners when they say we're cutting taxes for income earners that earn a significant amount of money. Well, everybody freaks out. So it's just interesting in terms of the posturing or the positioning of all this. And I guess I would only point out that small business owner that's now going to pay 25%, Mark Luschini, might be running the dry cleaners or a string of dry cleaners and making $10 million a year. But it doesn't sound as onerous because you say we're going to lower taxes for small business owners while simultaneously penalizing. I still go back to that, those that are working for the dry cleaners.
Well, potentially, although arguably I don't know if somebody working for a dry cleaner owner is necessarily going to be in the 35% tax bracket.
You know what I mean, though. You know what I mean. In other words, if you are a wage earner, for whatever reason, our politicians are not comfortable giving back to the people that earn the money to begin with. If you're a wage earner, you're not going to see as big a cut as you would if you own the business, okay? And I understand why they're doing this. It's because they get bullied by the left. The idea that somehow taxes could go down on someone who's making a couple $100,000 a year in New York City, well, that doesn't sit so well in other parts of the country. And so this, Brian, is ultimately what it comes back to. I say there's a difference between wealth and income. And I don't understand why we want to penalize those that are going out and working for a living. It doesn't make sense. It seems very un-American.
Well, look, I would like to see the individual rate drop down and align them all as closely as possible. But it's important to remember, if we're going to charge a 20% corporate tax rate to Fortune 500 companies and Exxon and all of those companies, we can't turn around and charge a 35% tax rate to the small business down the street.
I agree with that. I do absolutely agree with that. Of course, you know, I would just like to see all these things lower. I'd like to see a lower income tax and lower corporate tax, and I think this will all be stimulative. I'll take what we can get, I suppose. You know, originally we were talking 15%. Now it looks like it's going to be 20. Let's hope it stays at that. But lower taxes should help us a lot, and we need the growth because we got a pretty heavy debt load.